thank you so much for joining us for this Talent Toolbox series event. Today we will be covering interviewing and negotiation tips and techniques. Please note that the event is being recorded and will be available for reviewing at any time on our community events page. I'm going to drop that in the chat here right now. Highly recommend you bookmark that site. It's gold. And please note that the tips and techniques that we're going to be discussing here today are based upon proven best practices. However, ultimately, you are always responsible for identifying what works best for you in your own business. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in here. My name is Will Simpson, and I am an Upwork event manager and also a freelance graphic designer on the Upwork platform. And today we're joined by Hilda Medrano from our Upwork coaching team. Thank you so much for joining us, Hilda.
Thank you for having me, Will.
All right, and today we're going to be going over how to prepare appropriately for interviews. We're going to look at tips and techniques for successful interviewing, and then tips and techniques on when and how to improve negotiations. So some larger topics. And again, this event is aimed more at people in the intermediate stage of their freelancing, as opposed to perhaps those that are starting. Definitely applicable, but that is our goal here. So to start off with, preparation. One important key to success is self-confidence. And an important key to self-confidence is preparation. And I really like that. Confidence is a huge factor when interviewing successfully. If you come across a bit timid or unsure, that's what you're imparting to the client. So first up, now there are the obvious steps that we all know to take by this point, like check your technology, check your microphone, your camera, be clean and in a quiet location without interruption. Things of this nature, we should already know by now. And if you don't, I have some good webinars to send you. But what are the next level of items we should be considering and exercising to optimize our success when interviewing for client projects? Hilda, what are your thoughts?
So I think aside from what you said, the basics that we know is paying attention to detail. And what I'm referring to is reviewing the details of the job post before you interview. So having that information fresh in your mind, it helps you, it allows you to restate what the important items that the client listed in their project. So it's fresh, you know what you're talking about, you're not generalizing it. Do your homework also is a good one. If the company's website or the name of the company is available, look at their webpage. Familiarize yourself with what they do, what services they offer. It always impresses clients that you took that couple of minutes to learn a little bit more about them. If the name of the company for some reason is not available, you can always ask the client before your interview. Let them know that you want to do a little bit of homework and familiarize yourself with their company and what services they offer. Again, 5-10 minutes or so of looking through their website is surely going to give you some great information to talk about, during the interview and impress them. Let them know that you care enough to find out what their company is all about.
Absolutely. And I found also oftentimes when you're looking at a client's website, you'll oftentimes be able to identify the key themes and phrases or buzzwords that are hot in their mind. And you can use those to sort of parrot them back and show that, yes, I am paying attention. So absolutely. Next up, you want to make sure you have examples lined up. Now, from my experience on the Upwork platform as both a client and a freelancer, having a well-organized library of shining examples of projects I've completed in the various spaces I support has been instrumental in capturing the attention of prospective clients. Now, from a client perspective, when I'm provided with these example assets, which are super closely aligned to what I'm looking to accomplish, it makes it a no-brainer to interview these independent professionals. What are your thoughts on that, Hilda?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it goes back to, paying attention and reviewing the job post. Is clients like to hear about specific projects you've completed that are similar to theirs. And they appreciate examples of your work. Often when I talk to freelancers, they'll say, well, I'm not in a visual field, so I don't have examples of websites I created. Have those examples in your mind written down. Again, you reviewed the project, you know what it's about. Have those examples to verbally tell them, I've completed a project just like yours. I've done 3 projects just like yours, ranging from different timeframes. It lets them know, again, specifically what that client is looking for, what they want, and you can help them with that. When sharing your examples, be it visually or non-visual, is provide them details of that. What did you do? What was your role? What were some challenges? Maybe the results. Clients like to see statistics as well. Numbers or other factors are, whenever possible, are helpful for them. For example, a project that was completed in less time than expected, or perhaps you had fewer revisions. They like to hear that. Again, it's something tangible that they know you've completed. It relates to their project, and it gives them, food for thought as far as how long it took or what the advantage is of hiring you versus hiring someone else.
Absolutely, very valid, and that's a topic that comes up a lot in many of the webinars that I've hosted. Is I'm not in a visual field. How do I showcase what I've done? And I think you hit it on the head there. Statistics are a good way to lead. And what's more is you can take maybe on more of a portfolio side, but even sharing with people, you can make those statistics into an infographic where it's visually engaging. And if you don't have that skill set, guess what? Upwork does. Hire someone.
Hire someone to do it for you. Absolutely.
Hire someone like me. I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really good advice for people that are working like accountants, lawyers, sales reps. You don't have just a picture of what you do, but you do have statistics and you do have feedback and testimonials. So
Correct.
very important. All right, let's transition now into the interviewing itself. And I love this quote: "Trust yourself. You know more than you think you do." This comes back to a topic that I would be surprised if not everyone has experienced, but that imposter syndrome. I know that anytime that I've entered a new position, albeit it in the same company or in a new company, I enter a new position, even though I know what I'm doing, I sometimes feel like a bit of an imposter. Like, I hope no one comes on to the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing. But we are the professionals on Upwork. The clients that we're addressing, they're looking for the professionals, and you are the professional. So it's a good mindset to retain and sort of center back to. First up, we want to remain client focused. Now, it is very easy to fall into the habit of listing off one's accomplishments or capabilities. I know I've been guilty of that. However, when it comes to the client perspective, they typically only really care about what has a direct impact on their situation or project that they're looking to hire assistance for. Now, with that in mind, continually striving to relate your applicable skills and accomplishment as they relate to the client objective is an important skill to develop. What are your thoughts, Hilda?
Yeah, absolutely. Clients want to know that you care about helping them with their specific problem, that you understand their business or their industry, that you understand the problem that they're facing, that you want to contribute to the success or goals or, to the completion of whatever project is before them. Again, like you said, Will, you're the expert. They're coming to you to seek your, expertise and your help on that. If they could do it themselves, they wouldn't be hiring someone else. So you can explain the benefits of your services, that, what they'll provide. Keep in mind that their desired outcome is, and when it comes to this specific project, how you can contribute to that and how you can help with that. So it's all about you, the client. How can I help you? How can I benefit you? How can my services help you?
Absolutely. That is such a vital viewpoint, and a difficult viewpoint oftentimes to keep into perspective. And I want to provide an example here. This is something that sort of came up in a previous event. I think I was doing that one with you too, Hilda. As a graphic design freelancer, I basically live in Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator. And instead of just stating when communicating with clients that I have strong skills with this software, instead, I try and frame it in a manner that applies to the client project. So I'll give you an example. I leverage my extensive experience with Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator to ensure your graphic assets are constructed professionally and optimized for their intended functions. So I've said, yes, I'm great at Photoshop and Illustrator, but it wasn't about me being great at it. I'm using this skill set to make sure your project rocks, bring it back to that client. So it's just a slight perspective shift, and I've seen great results from that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, next up, we want to highlight your expertise. So as we discussed, keeping examples of your expertise framed in a manner that relates to the client projects and objectives is critical to capturing their attention. Hilda, can you explain on how best we can highlight our expertise to clients?
Yes, definitely. So a great way is to ask, questions that are helpful for you and for the client as well. And what I mean by that is, if they're helpful for you, as far as understanding more about the project, clarifying anything that needs to be clarified. And as far as the client is, reassuring that client again, that you care about understanding their project and how you can help them. Questions that help you clarify anything that wasn't specific in the job description are good. The goals of the project, perhaps is it a bigger part of, a bigger picture? How does it support them? Specifically, who is the lead on the project? Perhaps you need to collaborate with different teams. What resources will be needed and what hours you are available. That's usually very helpful, especially if you're dealing with a project that's going to be coordinated with others within the company. These questions all can help you demonstrate your interest in the project, and the answers can help you also with the outcomes and when it comes to negotiation.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great way to highlight your expertise, asking probing questions about the industry that someone who is unfamiliar would not know. It's not just the project, it's the things surrounding the project. For example, like when a client is looking for a logo project, I ask them, does this affect any of your other branded material? Does this affect your website, your sales material, whatever the case may be? So it's important to be asking those questions. So on the topic of asking questions, I have to say that from my experience, asking questions has to be one of the most valuable tools that I've honed over the years. And it sounds super simple, but there is definitely a craft to optimizing it.
Yes.
Not only is it a great way to get prospective clients to respond to your proposals and begin that interview dialogue, we're sort of hardwired to respond to a question, but it can illustrate a deeper understanding of the client project requirements and workflow. So any additional thoughts on questions, Hilda? I know we covered a bit of that just now.
Yeah, I think we kind of cover them. And like you said, it's more of asking the client just to get clarification. And even if you don't need clarification and you just want to restate, it's my understanding that you want X, Y, and Z. It's that reassurance of, I get what you're asking me. I know you don't need A, B, and C. You need X, Y, and Z. So that can also be very helpful in reassuring them that you are the right person for the project.
Absolutely. There's a good question that just popped up in a question here. I want to bring it up since it's topical to what we're talking about. They're asking, what if the client refuses to answer all the questions that they're asking? If they're working on a project and the client doesn't really know what they want. This happens a lot. I know from my experience that happens quite a bit, where the client you're talking to, they want this as the end destination, but they don't know all the in-between to get here, hence why they're hiring someone. But in those instances where you're not able to pull the information out from the client, maybe because they just don't have enough awareness around the topic. Maybe it's not their project, it's their boss's project that they handed to them and they only know this much about it. So in the instance when I'm having difficulty pulling out that information, oftentimes I will instead state what I believe to be true. Like, what I understand is you're looking for this and it needs to make sure it checks these boxes. Is that what you agree? So instead of asking, provide your understanding and they can say yes, no, and that's sort of a different way to get to that same end result. Is that sort of a viable approach there, Hilda?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when it's somebody, like you said, in your field, if it's technical. If I were to ask someone that I need an issue fixed with a website, I have no idea what it's going to take. I don't know the time. I don't know. Do I need a designer? Do I need a,
or what software?
I don't know. I don't know any of that. So basically asking them, okay, I understand you want me to fix this, or you want this as the outcome, correct? Then you can, as the expert, you can backtrack saying, well, wait a minute, if it's a design, I'm gonna have to deal with their IT. Maybe they have an in-house designer. Maybe they have, it can kind of give you, because again, sometimes the clients don't know. It's not that they don't want to give you that information, is that they honestly don't know what it's going to take.
Absolutely. And I think that during that process, while yes, it may take a little bit more awareness and time to establish that, you'll create a lasting relationship with that client. If you're willing to take the time and patience to walk them through it and hold their hand, you automatically put yourself in that trusted advisor, sort of project manager role. And you can bet you're going to see more projects if they got them.
Yeah. That helps with building that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So next up, I want to touch on expressing interest. So while this may seem obvious that we should be expressing interest when communicating with clients about their projects, there are many ways that this is conveyed other than simply submitting a proposal. Hilda, can you walk us through some of the important factors to expressing interest on a client project?
Yeah, so there are several factors that can help you demonstrate that interest in the project. As I mentioned before, asking questions, whether specifics or you just want to clarify what the outcome needs to be. That's a big one. You want to make it clear that you want to work on their specific project. Again, it goes back to, I want to help you. I can help you. It's all about, what you can offer to that client. That you can help with before choosing, to work with them, that you want to work with them, that you're interested in their project. When possible, use video in your interviews. Sometimes I get freelancers saying, well, I'm not, I don't have to talk to no one. I'm in the background. I'm doing analytics or graphic design or anything else. It helps you building that connection with the client, giving them of your attention. Sometimes things are said verbally that are not, I'm sorry, sometimes things are said visually that are not said verbally. For example, if I were to ask a client, well, are you going to need more than graphic design? This is going to tell me they have no idea. They don't know. Versus if you're just speaking to them, they might just answer, no, I don't think so.
Right.
Just
Yeah, a lot of
tiny
communication is visual.
Yes, it is. Sometimes they can show you the I'm not really sure what I need. And then you build
Right.
a little bit of the rapport, of that friendship, oh, I like those frames in your background. I like that painting, little things like that it doesn't seem like a big thing, but it can turn into a big thing. Showing them that attention, and don't underestimate, this is a big one that Will and I were just talking about earlier. Don't underestimate the importance of your appearance. Dress professionally. It shows the client that you care about their project, you're taking it seriously, that you value the impression of you. I have more often than not, have gotten freelancers that tell me, well, I don't own a suit. I don't own, a tie. It doesn't have to be that. It could be anything that's a neutral color, like I'm wearing. Anything that's neutral would be helpful. You just don't want to show up with things that are not going to be considered professionally. Either you're walking, playing with your dog, with your cat, wearing a hoodie, a hat, anything like that. You just want to put your best foot forward and show that client that you are professional, like we all are, regardless of where we're working in the world. If we're working from home or in our pajamas, we don't want to show that. We want to show them that we take this seriously. I take this meeting seriously with you.
Absolutely. And we have the added bonus of, for all you guys know, I could be wearing pajama bottoms right now. I'm
exactly.
not, but I could be. And you're absolutely right, though. One of the things I wanted to re-stress of one of the things you just mentioned is give the client 100% of your attention. When working remote, at any given time, I'm working on anywhere from 4 to 8 different projects from a variety of clients. I dip in and out of those projects. I have a bit of a scattered way my mind works. So I'll do like 20 minutes here and then I'm like, oh, I have a thought. 15 minutes over here. Don't do that when you're on the camera with them. Don't be thinking about what you're going to talk to your next client about. Don't be, staring off into space or taking notes that's unrelated. Be here, be now. And an added thing is also I bring a lot of my personality into my communications with clients. I'm a little bit silly, you guys may have noticed, but I bring a little bit of that mixed with my professionalism, and it helps me create good rapport with my clients. It just works the way for me. But tone is not conveyed in text. If I make a silly statement that's meant to be a joke, it will be much better received on a live camera situation than if I type it out and someone may read it in a negative voice, as if I'm making fun or speaking negatively of, when it's just a lighthearted statement. So it's important to consider these aspects. And I think you're absolutely right. The video portion of it and being attentive here, present, showing that you took into account that, yes, I'm professional, your results will be professional. I think it all paints such a very clear picture that sometimes we lose sight of, especially with COVID pushing everyone to online. We sort of get a bit more relaxed. So very, very good points. And to pin it in the end here, I've always noticed that clients buy you before they buy your services. And if they don't buy you, like if I come in here slouched and I got a bit of a bad attitude and mustard stains on my shirts, no one wants to buy that. And if they don't want to buy that, they're not even going to think about buying the awesome work that I can provide. We won't even get to that conversation. So it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a very good point brought up in the chat here, especially because we work with people from different cultures. Humor can be very different. You're absolutely right. I always make a concerted effort to identify where the client is from, and is English their native language. If English is not their native language, then a lot of the colloquialisms and slang that is sort of inherent to my dialogue, I try and trim that out and keep it a little bit more narrow and sort of be digested the way I hope it is. So very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Next up, let's get into negotiating. And I love this quote too. Place a higher priority on discovering what a win looks like for the other person. I think that this is historically not been innate in a lot of sales techniques, but I think culturally we're seeing a bit of a shift into, hey, make the customer win big and then you win big too, right?
Yeah.
So first up, knowing when to negotiate. When talking about negotiations, there are more factors involved than simply payment amounts. We have deadlines, we have deliverables, we have the possibility of future work with a client. So how do we know when and what we should be negotiating on? is negotiating also serving the function as outlining the scope of work and expected deliverables? What do you say?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to negotiating, you don't want to negotiate just for the sake of negotiating, right? You want to negotiate things that are crucial to you. And look at the value from the client's perspective. The goal of negotiating is for both the side, for both you and the client to be happy with the agreement. Consider your circumstances, determine if you need to the work or you can walk away from the deal. Sometimes it is difficult to negotiate with clients. They are set on this is what it's going to be. Then again, it goes back to you determining I can walk away from this or I will take that contract. Avoid proposing a rate increase if a client has a set hourly rate already and it's mentioned that it's not negotiable. I've seen clients say, it's just the way my budget is. This is the only rate I can pay. It's non-negotiable. If they make it clear, I personally would avoid that. Look at the aspects of the agreement instead, which may be a little bit more flexible. Contract deadlines, deliverables, the work schedule. I personally have done that myself where, they said you need to work X hours. It was off by an hour. I submitted my proposal and said I can work those, but would you consider this time frame? I ended up working with that client for 6 months. So certain things are negotiable. You just have to see how you want to approach it and what is and what isn't. You want to ensure also that you're not over promising, that you can meet all the obligations of the contract. This way you can deliver excellent work, which is going to help you grow possibly the contract into a long-term partnership. It could either be a longer contract or that client repeatedly coming back to you because you did the work as you promised that you would. You delivered it on the time that you said, under the revisions that you said. You just want to be truthful when you're doing the negotiations with a client.
Absolutely. And I'm noticing some good questions popping up in the Q&A in the chat here, just to address those great questions. I'm going to get to those in the Q&A section there, because I think they deserve a little bit more of a deep dive, but thank you, keep them coming. All right, so next up, being prepared to negotiate. So as we discussed in the beginning of the presentation, doing your homework is absolutely essential to success and conveying professionalism. Hilda, what are some of the things we should be preparing with when we're aiming to negotiate with a client? What do we need to have ready?
I think having the contract details on hand and relevant documents, a quick reference is helpful, just so you know exactly what what the contract is indicating and what you want to go ahead and negotiate. You want to be ready to answer tough questions as well that the client may ask you. Know the client, the deadline, the line of business that they're in, the services they offer, and review the recent reviews. You want to know not only what the project is about, but also what the client is, what services they're offering or what business they're in. And remember, the more you know about the client, the better you will be able to understand how your work is going to contribute to their success. I think that's something very important to know when you're negotiating with the client.
That's huge. Yeah, it helps you understand the context, which is so key. Very, very good point. And I'll sometimes take it a step further and find out who are the top competitors in their space and how do they present themselves. So keeping in mind that I'm a graphic designer, so I'm looking at, if we're looking at a specific company, I'll look at the top 5 people in that space. And is there a consistent theme in how they're presenting themselves? Is there a consistent theme in the type of verbiage that they're using, or stylistic or colors or anything like that? So when I do that, I come into the interview and the negotiation armed with, hey, here was your idea. Here's what your competitors are doing. And I'm seeing that the reviews on that are looking really good. Should we consider implementing these different aspects? But taking that knowledge, as you were saying, taking the context of knowing the company, knowing what people are saying about the services and how they position themselves, and then knowing the other folks, it puts you in a position of really knocking their socks off sometimes. When they hired you to do this one thing and you have all this surrounding knowledge, they'd be like, okay, hey, here's all the rest of the projects too. Yeah. So that's good. This next one's an interesting one, and it comes up a lot in a lot of our presentations, is negotiating when there is minimal details in a job description, such as I need a graphic designer. I love that. I'm like, yes, and to do what? But oftentimes we encounter job postings that have very little context or information on what the client is actually looking for. Now, I still bid on these as if they catch my eye, as I view them as opportunities to establish myself as a trusted advisor and professional by asking the right kinds of questions in my outreach. What are some suggestions from a coaching perspective that you can share with us, Hilda?
Yeah, so when speaking with both clients and freelancers about projects with little detail, I sense always a bit of frustration from the freelancers because the clients don't have much detail. But when speaking with clients, one of the aspects that is repetitive with them is they don't really know what it will take to resolve their issue. Sometimes they know that they need graphics on their website. They have no idea what that's going to entail or the time frame. Remember, they aren't the expert. You are. You may need to educate them a little bit of how long the project's going to take, the scope of the services, changes and revisions, as well as some specifics on the deliverable. Also, if it's an hourly contract, is there a minimum or a maximum number of hours that will be billed? If it's a fixed price, will payment be upon delivery or specific milestones? When it comes to revisions, outline how many, if any, revisions are included in the project. I think that's a good detail to have when it comes to negotiating.
Absolutely.
Especially on projects that don't really have details. I think you need to make it a little bit more clear for them, especially when it comes to, well, I need to revise 50 times. Wow, wait a minute. I think it only needs about 3
I don't
or
think
4.
so.
So the
Yeah.
more you educate the client and let them know what it's going to take, the better they're going to have an understanding of, oh, okay, well, then this is what we're going to need. This is what it opens up that negotiation once they understand what the project is about and what it's going to take for you to be able to complete that for them.
Absolutely. And a couple of folks are asking if they can get a copy of these slides. Again, the recording of this session will be available once we've completed it, give it maybe a day or two, and it'll be live at that link that I just posted, the upwork.com/community/events. Bookmark that site, get it tattooed on you, whatever it takes to keep it present in your mind. There is a wealth of knowledge here. We deep dive into a lot of different topics. I'll talk more on that later so we stay on topic, but bookmark that site, I promise you. So next up, I wanted to speak to the strategies that increase the value of a client project. So one of the topics I bring up in as many of these events as I can is to upsell whenever possible with your awesome existing clients. Keep in mind that recurring business streamlines a lot of the non-paid time and effort, which takes place during the proposal writing and the interview process. These are hours you're not billing for. And so if you're not successful in them, it's time and energy burned. So recurring clients are, for me at least, a goal that I always strive to get to. But I always ask the client about other potential areas I can support them now that the primary objective was achieved. So as an example, if I just did a new logo for a client, I'll ask them if they'd like to update their sales or support materials to match the new styling. And this oftentimes leads to much larger contracts stemming from a seemingly small one-off job. Oftentimes clients are sort of test driving in the space. If they're new to Upwork or just hiring remotely, they don't necessarily want to put everything they have out there and say, oh yeah, we got $20,000 to spend. They might start with, hey, let's do a $400 project and see if this works for us. So it can lead to much larger contracts. So what are some more techniques that we can leverage to increase the value of our projects, Hilda?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, offering related services is a great technique. Offering ongoing services to clients is also a great one. Touch on other areas that your skills can be helpful and offer those services. Offering a quick turnaround service for a higher rate. This can result in future projects that are in need for quick deliverables because you've offered that in the past and they remember you did an amazing job. That's right, we need a quick turnaround. Let's reach out to Will again. Ask for repeat business. If the project is something that more than likely will come up again, for example, video editing or project management, ask for that repeat business with them. Consider sending a follow-up message. I personally do this to the client after the end of a service on a periodic basis. I'll check in and remind them that I'm able to assist if they need to, especially when I do anything that's project management or business operations, employee, management, handling employee handbooks. I usually reach out once a year because I know things change, employee changes, laws change, it's easy for me to follow up. But you can do that pretty much in every field that you work in. You can directly ask for more work as well. You can advertise your services or even provide an update about new project you completed or perhaps a skill you acquired. If it's relevant to the client, you can let them know now you're certified in this, or now you've done 20 projects relating to this. It's letting them know, upkeeping them of what you can offer if it changed, or reminding them, that you can do certain projects that they might be in need of.
That's so valuable. I'd not really considered that, but you're right. I mean, I think inherently, and I would hope this is true for everyone on this event, inherently, just by doing independent professional work for a variety of clients, you augment the skills you have. You may have 90% of the skills to do a job, but every job is different than another job and requires some new nuance, or maybe it's a new software, maybe it's a new presentation, whatever the case may be. We're always expanding our skill sets and going back to the clients that were fantastic clients and saying, hey, I have this new skill set, here's some examples you may want to check out. That's a great way to drum up business. And with people that already know you deliver good work, you don't have to start from the beginning. I love that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. It's minor, but it makes a big difference.
It does. And as I mentioned earlier, I do my best to try and get repeat business. And it's funny, I actually just got reached out to this week. I bring it up in a few presentations, but it tickles me. I still have my very first graphic design client that I ever worked with back when I was charging. I'm not even going to tell you how much I was charging. I was not making money, I'll tell you that much. But I was brand new to it, and I still have my very first client. And as my skill sets have gotten more evolved, I've moved my price point with her, and she's been happy to stay with me. But that relationship is such that I can count that every year I'm going to get some work from her on these different things. And that actually brings up another point, knowing that a lot of your clients have cyclical project needs. So in the graphic design space, an obvious example is trade show season. I know that I have 4 clients that actively engage with trade shows. I know that those happen within 3 months of the year. So typically in end of December, beginning of January, February, suddenly everyone's like, hey, we have a trade show in 2 weeks. We need to get some stuff printed. I know to reach out to those people and say, hey, I know trade show season is coming up. You guys need an update? And it shows that I'm taking care of them, that I'm managing it, and that I'm aware of their space. And so I find that was quite helpful as well.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you can do it, like I said, with any category, whether it be if it's customer support or admin, around the holidays, people take time off around the summer. It could be for anything. You can definitely use that tactic with anything. And it's really helpful just to keep them fresh in your mind that, oh yeah, that's right, Hilda helped me with that project. We do have something coming up this summer. Let me reach out. I've gotten multiple repeat clients doing that.
Yeah, and it's so easy to do when you're working through the in-dash messaging through Upwork.com, the messaging there. You can you got a day with a light workload, cool, go through your previous clients, see, okay, I could reach out to these 5. I haven't talked to them in a while, and they're in sort of a space where I have something new and juicy to talk about. It's super easy. I'm absolutely going to incorporate that. Thank you. So next up, how to stand out and increase your negotiation strength. Now, one of the common questions we receive from independent professionals attending these events is how best they can stand out from their peers applying for the same jobs while also setting themselves up for success. Hilda, can you share with us some techniques on this topic?
Definitely. So demonstrating your compatibility is a great way to show clients you are the best candidate for the job. You want to showcase your proven results in past projects. And again, that could be in an interview, that could be in your portfolio, that could be in project catalog. Those are great ways to be able to do that. You also want to explain how the work contract will benefit the company. Again, demonstrate your value, how you can contribute to that business and company, and know your worth. This is probably one of the biggest questions that I get from clients is how do I determine what my rate should be or what I'm worth? You want to set your rate to reflect the market value of your services. So based on your skills, your experience level, track record, and quality of delivery, you want to look at other freelancers in your category, what they're charging. I remember doing that at the beginning of my career and going, oh, I've been doing something wrong. Look at other freelancers, search for other freelancers with similar skills, and focus on the top freelancers that you can find. Consider the following questions when you're thinking about setting your rate. These are good questions to keep in the back of your mind. How much money do I need to make to support my lifestyle? How much money do I want to make as a goal? What do other freelancers charge for similar services as mine? How much money would I make as a full-time employee? What expenses do I have as a freelance business owner? Are my skills in demand? How much value can I bring to the client? These are good questions to know when it comes to determining, what is my value? How am I going to stand out from others? I think it's huge, especially in a virtual world, is to demonstrate that ability and stand out from others to be able to increase your rate.
Let's dip into some Q&A. Okay, we had a couple good ones here, and I wanted to dive into some of these questions. So it's a seemingly simple question, but a very good question here. How important is a well-lit room? And I think this plays into the same, I think this is in context, sorry, of doing a video interview. When you're on camera, how is important is it to have a well-lit room? And I think this ties into the same reason it is important, same reason why you don't want to wear a hat or a hoodie. Anytime that you're sort of not well lit and easily visible, it has the subconscious effect of making it seem like you're trying to hide something. Even though you're probably not, you're just comfortable, or you don't want the bright lights on. There is just a psychological response in humans when if you are is shadowed in some way, it just provides that sort of a feeling. Would you agree with that, Hilda?
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's something minor. I mean, we can move our laptops, computer anywhere, but it's something minor. But that sense of darkness automatically, I know it has to be psychological, automatically gives us a sense of what's going on there. What is that? It's simple fixes, close to a window, turning your laptop a certain way, opening, curtains, anything like that. But it is important. Sometimes it's a little hard to find, but there's lots of ways that you can get creative to get better lighting. But it is important. It's minor. It doesn't seem like it, but it is very important.
Absolutely. Good comment there in the chat. Think haunted houses and scary movies. You're absolutely right. Those
Right?
are never well lit, and there is a reason for that.
Yeah, imagine if you walked into that room and it wasn't dark. It wouldn't be scary. You could
It
walk
wouldn't be
into any
scary at
room.
all.
If it is dark, it's going to give you a sense of suspicion, something's going on
Foreboding.
there.
Yeah, totally. So this has come up in a variety of different ways, and I'd like to take a moment to address it. Now, to keep, when discussing rates, how do you answer a client that wants to have a lower rate than what you're suggesting? This is a great topic, and we could devote an entire event to this. In fact, I'm pretty sure we have. But to touch on it briefly, how would you respond to this? How would you address that?
So, like I said, it sometimes it's because the clients have a specific budget. Again, they're looking at it from a bigger picture. This section of my employer only allows this amount of leverage. I can't really play with the hourly rate. This is what it's going to be. I can't really change it. That's a little bit different. And sometimes, they want to save on it. They want to find someone who's going to be at a lower rate. They just want to save money. A great tip that I give clients or freelancers when they are either negotiating, be it, in an interview or in their proposal, you want to let them know why you're worth the higher rate, not why you're charging the higher rate, why you are worth the higher rate. It could be because you have less revisions going on. It could be because you can deliver it and faster than others. It could be because you have a large amount of examples of the work that you've done. You are a professional. You've done this. You know this inside and out. You can give them examples, but you want to show them again why you are worth that much. Again, it comes to know when to negotiate. Negotiate just because, I really want to buy that really nice, addition to my home. I need a couch, or, I need to buy something really nice for a vacation coming up, or, I have this huge bill that I know it's going to hit me and I need to pay it. You have to be willing and able to complete that project successfully so that you have that happy client coming back, and you want to show them why you are worth the higher rate.
Absolutely. And, it's in addition to creating value, it also stems from something we talked about in a lot of instances where the client that you're talking to may not be familiar with what it takes. So, for example, I'm making a logo and a client says, I want a logo, here's $10. And I say, okay, you can get a $10 logo you don't want a $10 logo. I'm going to explain to you why. Plenty of people will offer you the $10 logo, and that's fine if you want that. But the difference is, these things will be taken into consideration. The output formats will look good on these different mediums. You'll be able to leverage it in this way, that way. Paint a picture for them. Create that value by explaining why the rate should be this, not what you're saying. And this is why I'm validating that this is the case. You can absolutely go find that, but trust me, you don't want it. And I've had a few of those conversations, and when I approach it like that, as opposed to just, well, this is how much I bill, that's a conversation ender. When I say that's absolutely fine if you want to go that route. However, these are the differences that I've found when you're looking at these various price points. These are the aspects you may not be familiar with. Sometimes the tools are very expensive, in coding, whatever the case may be. So shedding a little bit of light on it is very helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, there is a question here regarding, is there a way to start a group with other freelancers that do specifically what I do to get specific tips? I just want to do a quick plug here. That is part of a relatively new initiative, I believe, called Groups. And the groups are still formulating. A lot of them right now are geography-based rather than industry vertical-based. Like there's Ukraine, there's North America, there's, mothers in freelancing. There's a lot of groups appearing, but they're constantly evolving. So just on the Upwork page, do a search for groups, or if Googled Upwork groups, you'll see a little bit of context on that one. We don't have enough time to go fully in depth on it, but that is where there's different segments of people with crossover interests are connecting, like a cohort, but not specific to a timeline. More of just a forum where people are in the same sort of segment. For those asking, there will be a recording. There is a recording here. Let me post that link again here. So in the chat section here, this is where you can find a recording of this event, probably in about 24, 48 hours. It takes a minute before it uploads. But there also, it shows upcoming events and it shows historical events. We've done a lot of fantastic ones on information surrounding this event, like knowing when and how to raise your rates. And just one specific on communication, you name it, we've done events on it and we'll continue to do them. But a very good thing to check out there. There was a topic that was brought up a few different times, and we don't have the time to delve too deeply into it, but it did spark an idea. The question is how to go about raising your rates, whether that's with an existing client or whether that's just in general. How do you know what you should set it to, and do you just have a dartboard on a bunch of numbers? I don't recommend that technique. But one of the techniques that I've used was to, and I think you mentioned this earlier, Hilda, in one of the sides we were talking about, is look at what people in your space are doing, other freelancers, other independent professionals. When you're on the Upwork homepage, at the very top, sort of in the center, a little bit left justified, there's a search bar, not the searching for jobs, just up at the top. Now, as an independent professional on the freelancer side of it, it will default look for jobs when you type in there. However, there's a little drop down arrow and you can change it to looking for talent, which is us. We are talent. And in there, you go ahead and hit enter, and then you can take a look at a whole new bunch of menus where I'm looking at graphic designers that are 5-star rated with a 90% JSS or higher. I'm setting different filters to try and find the cream of the crop, the people that are doing really well. And then I go through and I look at, okay, I'm looking at Steve, and Steve's a graphic designer. He's doing well. I look at Steve's work and I'm like, well, I can't really do that yet. I'm close, but I'm not as good as Steve yet. So maybe I should be just under what he is billing hourly. And then I look at some other ones. Oh, I can definitely do that. I should at least be charging that much, because you can see if they're highly ranked with a lot of jobs behind them, people are happy to pay that amount for that deliverable. And for me, that gave me a bit of a benchmark. Is that a applicable technique there, Hilda? Any comments on that?
No, absolutely. That is a perfect technique. But a big comment, especially when you mentioned I can do what Steve does. I've had it where freelancers search and say, well, wait a minute, Bob's charging 100 and I can do more than Bob, but my profile doesn't have that. I don't have as much examples as Bob does. So if you know you can do more than Bob, show it. Add things to your portfolio, add that information in your overview. The more information you give to that client, the more you are justifying that value and how much you're charging. So also take a look at how they present themselves. There are some freelancers that present themselves rather well. They explain, their experience, their skills, their expertise. They have ample examples. They have specialized portfolios. They'll have an intro video with their graphics. If they're not in a graphic field, they're having, narrated video of what they do. Sometimes they'll have something similar to what we have here of just them talking about their background. And maybe you can see what you can do on your profile to kind of up that rate, and show that value to the client of why you are worth, what you're charging. But yeah, definitely looking at other freelancers and comparing yourself is super helpful. I remember, like I mentioned earlier, doing that at the beginning, going, uh-oh, I don't have enough information. I didn't have enough skill tags. It was a mess. I didn't know where to start. I think most of us, start that way. We just don't know what's going on. And, back, that was almost 7 years ago that I started freelancing on Upwork. We didn't have as what we have now. Like Will said, the community. Add that, look at it daily. There's tons of information, webinars, helpful resources. There is a lot of help on there, and it wasn't as big as it is now back then. So it was kind of blindly looking at others going, well, this person looks really good. And I remember just going into a rabbit hole of looking at lots of people with my expertise. And another thing I noticed is I was all over the place. I was mentioning 50 different things that I could do, which is great, but I had to pull back going, wait a minute, do I want to do all those 50 different things on Upwork? Not really. I have legal knowledge. Do I want to give legal? Well, no, because I'm not an attorney. So I want to take that out. And I kind of focused on what is it that I want to offer on Upwork, and then build on that, especially with specialized profile. I want to build on this. So let me look at freelancers that are building on this, that are offering this specific service. It's important to have a niche. You can offer different services. I currently offer 5 different services, but the niche is very similar. I know that I want to offer, business operations and business development services, but I also do human resources, and I also do, it kind of relates. You just don't want to, clients like to see experts. You can be an expert in certain areas, but do you really want to show them that you're an expert in 30 different things?
Yeah, it comes across less valid. Like if you're spread too thin, you may just have a surface level knowledge. Whereas opposed if you pick 3 to 5 topics, it's sort of expected you have a much higher knowledge or experience in that field. You're absolutely right. Great question here in the chat. Just going to quickly answer. Do I need written or verbal permission from clients to share a project I worked on for them in my portfolio? Absolutely. I would in the chat section, I always ask, is it all right with you if I use this asset in my portfolio? I don't know if it's absolutely required, but or legally, or if it's just a best practice, but I take it as law. I don't want to, the assets you create for your clients are owned by the clients unless you have a contract that states otherwise. So it is their property technically once you make it. And oftentimes when I've designed something for a client, they may just want to anonymize it, or take out a price point or something like that. I've very rarely had a client say, no, you can't use it. But I've had plenty of clients say, yes, but remove this name, or, put a different logo on it. We don't necessarily need it branded up. Whatever the case may be, they may have their own specifics, but just being thoughtful, I think, is the best way to approach that, right?
Yeah. Offering that client that courtesy of, I love I'm so proud of the project that we completed, whether it be visual or non-visual. I like to share some details and show other clients that I can help them like I helped you. A lot of the times it's just they want you to remove certain things, or oftentimes they're perfectly okay with it.
And an excellent point was brought up in the chat just right now by one of our attendees here. A good point that we usually don't even know when our designs will take effect. Sometimes we work for stuff a year in advance, and if you put it on your portfolio the next day and they're not planning on releasing it till a year later, you may have really messed up your client. It's a very valid point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Let's see here. We have time for a few more questions. Let's see what we can get in here. Oh, in regards to the cohorts, are those invite only?
They are invite only. In the future, we are going to have under Academy, you'll see it on Upwork on the top menu. You'll see something called Academy, and you will see there is some, there's going to be future, visual trainings, and that you'll be able to join after taking those. There'll be some webinars, recorded webinars that we'll have on there, and you will be able to request to join. But as of right now, they are invite only. But anybody that attended today with the link that was provided and will also be in the recording, you'll be able to join the cohort. It's a cohort that's starting Monday for everyone who attended this webinar today.
Fantastic. Let me see here. It's a great question. I was actually just getting to that. It popped up in the chat as I was looking for it. How do we break from the local price estimation stereotypes? And I use an example that if I was billing from a British area, like I'm in England, and I'm putting my hourly rate, it may be accepted differently as when I'm in India. How do we address that? Is what we're billing based on where? Should it be based on where we're located? Should it be based on where the client is located? I know that this is a very sort of mercurial gray area, but is there any sort of best practice or wisdom you can share on that?
I think a best practice of that is not so much that is based on your location, is based on the services that you can offer. Now, there are clients who are looking for a specific region because they know it could be a lower rate. And again, it comes back to, then why are you worth the higher rate? You want to show why you are charging more. You don't necessarily have to charge less, because again, it's not a fact, it's a stereotype. It's clients think from this location they're going to charge less than from this other location. Not necessarily. You can find talent that maybe they price themselves low because they're starting out, and they can be in an expensive state like California. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but if you do come across that, and it is a reality, there is that stereotype that certain areas in the world are cheaper, is you want to make sure that you stand out. You want to show them why, not that you're just decided, today I just want to charge $200 an hour. You want to show them why you are worth. And that's why I always stress that, not that you're charging, it's why you are worth. Your services are worth X amount. You want to show why you're worth that much. You can do that in a proposal or in your profile. I personally do it on both my profile and in every single proposal. I always mention, you may notice my rate, perhaps it might be higher than other freelancers, but this is why. I bring this to the table. I've done this. I've created this. I'm able to do this plus this. You want to, it's your selling point. So you want to let them know why you're worth more than somebody else, regardless of the region you're in.
Absolutely. And I think that's very important to note. And I think this also has a sort of tangential relationship to imposter syndrome. If I'm competing, if I'm in one of these areas that has that stereotype around it, or I believe has a stereotype around it, then I may be shy about putting my actual value when my work is absolutely worth that. So I think coming back to what we were saying earlier, look at what the market will bear. Look at the other freelancers, independent professionals on the platform. Can you do that work? Can you do it as well and as thoughtfully and as thoroughly as they can? If so, then you should absolutely be charging that much money, because people are happy to pay for it. Doesn't matter where I'm sitting. I could be sitting on the moon.
Exactly. And regardless, that could be in any field that you do. A graphic designer will do amazing work in, New York, then they will do it in India, Philippines, Ukraine. It doesn't matter. The same thing with customer support. You can do it in every single job or area that we're all in. It could be done in any seat in the world. It doesn't matter. And that's what you want to convey to the client. It's not so much where I'm located, is what I can do. If I were to fly right now to anywhere in the world, I could still do what I'm doing from there. That's the beauty of freelancing.
Absolutely. So there's a couple people asking more about the groups. I do not have a lot of that information handy, but I do have a page that you can start on to see some of the groups. I'll go ahead and post that in the chat here. Feel free to take a look.
If you've been in the community, it's very similar to when on the community, when somebody will post, let's just say Will goes on there and says, hey, hi everyone, I have a question on my profile. It's very similar to that, with the exception is that one of us Academy coaches is driving it. So if it's my cohort, it will be, welcome, this is how it's going to work. This is the information I'm going to be sharing daily. These are the topics that I'm going to, share some best practices and insights on. And then based on those postings, you can ask questions. If I post something on rates, then you can jump in with, that's great. I have questions. Or are you going to have an Ask Me Anything that it's going to be all about the specific, thing you posted about? So it's very similar to that. If you've ever been in the community and you can look at it with the link that Will just shared. If you've ever been on there where someone is posting, it's very similar, with the exception that it is a specific group. It's similar to a class. We all start on Monday, and every day something is shared, and then it ends in 3 weeks from that. That's the only difference from community and the groups, is that they're they're closed, they're invite only, and it's specifically driven by a coach.
Absolutely. All right, folks, well, we've run out of time here. I know a couple people having to leave here for other meetings. Thank you so much for joining us here. And Hilda, thank you so much for bringing your expertise to share with the group today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love doing these.